Obsolete after all the contributions I've made to this organization. I gazed at James with incredulity, my words barely a whisper in the suddenly quiet meeting room. "This isn't about you personally, Ariana," he responded, his gaze avoiding mine. "We require new viewpoints, fresh talent. The manufacturing sector is changing, and we must adapt alongside it." 20 sets of eyes observed our confrontation. My coworkers, individuals I'd collaborated with for years, fidgeted restlessly in their chairs. Several stared down at their notepads, completely avoiding this uncomfortable scene. James straightened his necktie, a slight grin forming at his mouth's edge. "Human Resources has prepared your termination package. We'll require your access card and computer before your departure from the premises." The shame coursed through me. 2 decades at Meridian Manufacturing vanished in a brief 5-minute presentation given during our regular monthly team meeting. I inhaled deeply, stood up from my seat, and gave a nod. "I hope everything goes well for all of you," I stated, my tone more composed than my emotions. I collected my notebook and writing instrument, the sole personal belongings I'd carried to the meeting, and exited without saying anything further. My identity is Ariana Vasquez, 49 years of age. Until 10 minutes prior, I held the position of Production Systems Manager at Meridian Manufacturing, among Chicago's most prominent custom metal fabrication enterprises. I began as an aide on the manufacturing floor at 29 and advanced through the ranks, mastering every facet of our production systems, both the documented procedures and the unwritten ones that ensured smooth operations. For 20 years, I'd been the individual everyone contacted during crises, the person who remained after hours resolving supplier complications, who understood which equipment required careful handling, who recalled that customer A required their deliveries packaged in a particular manner or they'd refuse the complete order. I developed workarounds and fixes that existed in no handbook because necessity demanded it. The organization expanded more rapidly than our documentation could match, and now James Henderson, our new operations director who'd been with the firm merely half a year, had determined I was obsolete. While clearing my workspace, my phone vibrated with texts from several coworkers expressing astonishment and compassion. I valued their support but understood it wouldn't alter anything. I packed 20 years of personal belongings in less than 30 minutes, a disappointingly small assortment of photographs, certificates, and desk decorations. During my exit, I encountered Denise from the accounting department, who embraced me quickly and murmured, "This is insane. You realize that new automated stock system they're launching next week? Nobody understands how it connects with our payment monitoring system." I grinned ruefully. "I'm certain they'll resolve it," but while surrendering my badge to security and walking toward my vehicle, a chilling understanding settled in my gut. They wouldn't resolve it because I was the sole person who completely grasped how extensively interconnected our systems were, and I had just been expelled. My association with Meridian Manufacturing started when my daughter Sophia was merely 4 years old. As an unmarried mother possessing only an associate's degree, I felt thankful for the steady employment and dedicated myself to learning whatever I could. The initial years were a careful balancing performance, childcare collections, doctor's visits, and late-night studying of manufacturing procedures after Sophia's bedtime. I missed theatrical performances and parent-teacher meetings due to urgent orders. I delayed holidays when systems required updates. I skipped my own mother's 70th birthday party because an important client was touring Meridian. Meridian became my secondary residence, and my colleagues became a sort of family. Robert, the former operations director who retired last year, acknowledged my commitment. "You're the adhesive keeping this place unified, Ariana," he'd frequently comment. Under his guidance, I received 3 promotions, ultimately supervising all production systems. Robert comprehended that my worth wasn't merely in my actions, but in my knowledge, the organizational wisdom that couldn't be documented in procedures or handbooks. I attempted to record the systems I'd established. I genuinely did. Every January, I'd begin the year resolved to document everything, but emergencies constantly took priority. A supplier would abruptly cease operations, equipment would malfunction, or a client would require last-minute modifications to a significant order. The documentation stayed perpetually unfinished, existing primarily in my memory. When James Henderson arrived 6 months ago to succeed Robert, I harbored doubts, but attempted to give him a fair chance. He came from a larger manufacturing operation with outstanding qualifications and spoke continuously about modernization and effectiveness. Initially, I valued his new perspective. Meridian had grown accepting of certain inefficiencies, and some procedures required updating. I attempted to collaborate with him, describing the intricate network of systems and workarounds that maintained our operations' functionality, but James appeared more focused on rapid victories than comprehending the foundation. "We must simplify," he'd declare, dismissing my clarifications. All this informal knowledge is exactly the issue. When he revealed plans to implement a new automated inventory system, I expressed concerns regarding integration with our current processes. "Have faith in me," he stated. "This new system will enhance efficiency significantly." I observed how he began excluding me from strategic meetings, how younger staff with less experience but advanced technical degrees were suddenly assigned projects that would typically fall under my supervision, how my recommendations in meetings were regularly dismissed or interrupted. Still, I never thought he would terminate me. Not when I was the only one who understood how all components connected, not when I had devoted 20 years of my existence to the company. That was my initial error. 3 days following my dismissal, I remained in disbelief. I'd spent the time revising my resume, though it seemed odd to summarize 20 years of experience into bullet points. Sophia, now 24 and residing in New York, called daily with encouragement and apartment listings in the city, proposing maybe it was time for a scenery change. "You've dedicated your entire life to Chicago, Mom. Perhaps this is the universe indicating you should attempt something different." I appreciated her positivity, but wasn't prepared to make any significant decisions. First, I needed to understand what had occurred. That morning, I met Denise for coffee. She appeared exhausted, with dark shadows under her eyes, suggesting poor sleep. "It's been mayhem," she said, stirring her latte distractedly. "The new inventory system became operational yesterday, and nothing is functioning correctly." I attempted to conceal my lack of surprise. "Growing pains. New systems always experience them." "This exceeds growing pains, Ariana. Orders are disappearing, inventory numbers are incorrect, and nobody can determine why the system keeps declining certain client accounts." She leaned closer. "James is panicking. The executive team is demanding answers, and he's informing everyone that you intentionally sabotaged the integration." "What?" I nearly toppled my coffee. "That's absurd. I would never do something like that." "We understand that," Denise reassured me, "but James requires a scapegoat." While driving home, my shock transformed into anger. After everything I'd contributed to Meridian, James was now attacking my professional reputation. It was beyond unjust. It was potentially harmful to my career prospects if rumors spread. I was still angry when my phone rang with an unknown number. Assuming it was a recruiter, I answered professionally. "Ariana Vasquez speaking." "Ariana?" Thank goodness. The voice was immediately identifiable. "David Sinclair, Meridian CEO. We have a crisis." The desperation in his voice was obvious. I stayed quiet, waiting. "Listen, I'll be direct. The new system is catastrophic. We have orders accumulating, inventory missing, and 3 of our largest clients threatening to withdraw their contracts unless we fix this immediately." He paused. "We need your return." I tightened my grip on the phone. "David, James just terminated me. He's telling people I sabotaged the company." "James doesn't understand what he's discussing," David replied dismissively. "He didn't realize how essential you were to our operations. None of us truly did. We undervalued your knowledge." The acknowledgement I'd sought for years had finally come, but only after everything had collapsed. Part of me wanted to enjoy the moment, to allow them to struggle, as I had numerous times trying to maintain their systems. But another part, the part that had invested my heart in this company for 2 decades, ached at the thought of everything I'd constructed crumbling. "Please, Ariana," David continued, his voice dropping to an almost begging tone. "Return as a consultant. Triple your former salary. We'll make it worthwhile. I sat in my car, staring at the phone, a storm of conflicting feelings overwhelming me. They required me now, but where was this acknowledgement when it truly mattered? After a sleepless night considering my options, I agreed to return to Meridian as a consultant, but under my conditions. I would work from home, establish my own schedule, and my contract would include a clause addressing James's false allegations. David agreed immediately, desperation clear in his voice. My first day back felt strange. I connected to Meridian systems from my home office. The familiar interfaces were now viewed through a different perspective. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a hired specialist brought in to rescue them from their own errors. It didn't require long to identify the main issues. The new inventory system hadn't been correctly integrated with the payment tracking system, exactly as I had cautioned. Furthermore, several client-specific workarounds I'd implemented over the years had been ignored during the transition. The system was attempting to enforce standardization on processes that required customization. I documented the problems and solutions systematically, creating clear instructions for the IT team. By day's end, the most critical issues had been resolved, and orders were processing again. I sent a thorough report to David, copying the relevant department heads, but intentionally excluding James. The following morning, my inbox contained grateful thanks from David and several other executives. The only message from James was brief: "Please include me on all future communications." I responded with professional courtesy, attaching my previous report. Within an hour, he requested an urgent virtual meeting with me and the IT team. When I joined the video call, James's face appeared on my screen, tense with barely controlled anger. "Ariana, while we value your assistance with the immediate crisis, we need to discuss your methodology," he began. "Some of your solutions seem to be reverting us to the previous methods rather than embracing the new system's capabilities." "I'm utilizing hybrid solutions that allow the new system to operate with our existing client requirements," I explained. "Many of our major clients have specific needs that the standard system doesn't accommodate." James shook his head. "That's precisely the problem. We've invested in this system to standardize our processes. If we continue making exceptions, we never modernize." One of the IT specialists, Tom, unmuted himself. "James, Ariana's approach is working. The critical errors have ceased, and we're processing orders again." "Temporarily," James insisted, "but it's not sustainable. We need to retrain our clients to work with our new standardized system." I muted myself to prevent an incredulous laugh from escaping. Retrain our clients? Some of these companies had been with Meridian for decades and represented millions in annual revenue. They wouldn't change their entire operation to accommodate our new software. The meeting continued with increasing tension. James kept pushing for his vision of complete standardization while the IT team grew visibly uncomfortable with his dismissal of practical solutions. Later that afternoon, I received an email from James outlining a new direction for my consulting work, essentially requesting me to create documentation for a standardization plan rather than fixing the immediate problems. It was a thinly disguised attempt to sideline me while still having access to my knowledge. I wrote a carefully worded response, copying David and the department heads, explaining why this approach would likely result in losing several major clients. I included revenue figures and contract terms to support my position. Within minutes, David called me directly. "Ariana, disregard James's email. Continue with your current approach. You have my complete authority." It was a small victory, but I knew it was temporary. James wouldn't simply accept being overruled. He would find another way to assert control and push me out again. That evening, while reviewing system logs to track down a persistent error, I discovered something unusual. Someone had attempted to modify several key configuration files the night before I was fired. The timestamps matched a time when most employees would have been gone, but the building access logs would show who was present. I needed those logs, but requesting them would alert James that I was investigating. I needed to be clever about this. The next day, I called Denise under the pretense of needing clarification on some accounting workflows. Our conversation wandered naturally to the topic of the building's new security system installed last year. It's been a nightmare, Denise sighed. We have to badge in and out of every section, and it logs everything. HR uses it for time tracking now. That sounds tedious, I sympathized. Who manages those logs? Is it still building services, or did they move that to IT? Neither. Everything's cloud-based now. Department heads can access their team's logs through the admin portal. This was exactly what I needed. Access to those logs would show who was in the building the night before my termination. Interesting, I said casually. Hey, since I'm working remotely, could you send me a link to that admin portal? I might need to check when certain team members were working on specific projects. Once Denise sent the link, I realized I needed login credentials. As a consultant, I no longer had admin access. I considered asking David directly, but worried it might raise questions about my intentions. Instead, I tried my old credentials on a hunch, and they worked. In their haste to bring me back as a consultant, IT had reactivated my previous access levels without adjusting the permissions. What I discovered in the logs sent a chill down my spine. The night before my termination, James had been in the building until nearly midnight, highly unusual for an operations director who typically left by 6 p.m. More importantly, he had accessed the server room using his badge. This coincided exactly with the system log showing configuration changes. But why would James modify system configurations? He wasn't technical, and such changes would normally be handled by IT. I dug deeper into the system logs and found that the modifications were subtle but significant, changes that would cause the new inventory system to fail in specific ways when integrated, but only under certain load conditions. The kind of failure that wouldn't appear in testing but would emerge catastrophically in production. The realization hit me like a physical blow. James had deliberately sabotaged the system. When I joined the video call, knowing it would fail after my departure, face appeared on my screen.
But why?
Tense, what could he possibly gain from creating chaos? Ariana, I spent the next 2 days discreetly investigating crisis, careful to maintain my consultant methodologies while pulling on this thread. Some of your solutions that seemed to be reverting us to previous methods rather than embracing the new system's James had worked for Vertex Manufacturing. I'm utilizing hybrid solutions that allow the new system to operate with our existing client requirements, but downplayed the connection. I explained. Further research many of our major clients had maintained stock options that the standard system even after leaving. Emails I accessed through my reinstated credentials the showed James had been quietly advising in this system several to standardize our processes, to consider alternatives in the wake of our system problems. We never modernized. One particularly damning message, one of the IT specialists, he suggested Vertex specifically, unmuted himself, noting their superior reliability. Ariana's approach, the truth was breathtaking. The critical errors had ceased. And James hadn't fired me because he thought I was outdated. James insisted. He fired me because I was the only person who could prevent his sabotage our clients to work with our new standardized system. He was deliberately tanking Meridian's operations to prevent an incredulous laugh from escaping. He had insider relationships with our clients whose some of these companies had been with Meridian for decades and represented millions in annual revenue. I sat back in my chair. They wouldn't change their entire operation to accommodate our new software. I had evidence of corporate espionage and sabotage. The meeting continued with increasing tension. Bringing it forward would be risky. James kept pushing for his vision of complete standardization while the IT team grew visibly uncomfortable with his twist it to make me look practical solutions or desperate. Later that afternoon, I needed to be strategic about an email from James outlining a new direction for my consulting work, certain of my evidence essentially requesting me to create documentation for a standardization plan rather than how far was I willing to go to protect a company that had discarded me after 20 years of loyalty, while still having access to my knowledge. As I stared at my ceiling, carefully worded response. This wasn't David just about Meridian, the department heads, or my wounded explaining pride. Why this approach it was about the hundreds of employees whose livelihoods depended on the company's survival. I included revenue figures people like Denise, contract who had worked alongside me for years. Within minutes, from IT, David called me directly. Putting his kids through college Ariana, with his Meridian disregard salary. James's email. I needed irrefutable continue evidence with your current and approach. A plan to present you have my complete authority or buried. It was a small victory. James had allies on the executive team. James wouldn't simply accept being overruled. Going directly to another way to might not be enough if James me out to convince others that evening fabricating while reviewing system logs to track down a persistent error. I created a secure folder containing all the evidence I'd gathered. Someone had attempted to modify several key configuration files the building access records showing James in the server room. The timestamps matched a time when most employees recommending Vertex. But the building access logs would stored it in multiple locations. I needed those including sending a copy to my personal lawyer with alert James that I was investigating only under specific circumstances. I needed to be clever about
about this.
Then I set a trap.
The next day, I called Denise
identified
under
the
the
next
likely
pretense of
target
needing
in
clarification
James's sabotage
on some
plan.
accounting workflows.
The production scheduling
Our
system,
conversation, which was
wandered
due for
naturally to the
integration with a
topic
new
of the
inventory
building's
system,
new security
the following
system,
week,
installed
if he
last
followed
year.
his pattern,
It's been a
he
nightmare.
would need to make modifications
Denise sighed.
soon.
We have to badge
quietly
in and out of
implemented a
every
monitoring
section,
protocol that
and
would
it
alert me
logs
to any
everything.
unauthorized changes.
HR uses it for
capturing
time tracking
detailed
now.
logs of the activity.
That sounds tedious.
For 3 days,
I sympathized.
I continued my
Who
consulting
manages
work
those
while
logs?
waiting for the alert.
Is it still building
On
services?
the fourth night,
Or
at
did they
11:23
move that to
p.m.,
IT?
my phone
Neither.
buzzed with the
Everything's
notification
cloud-based
I'd been
now.
expecting.
Department
Someone
heads
was
can
modifying
access
the
their
production
team's
scheduling
logs
system's
through the
core
admin
configurations.
This was
And
exactly
the monitoring
what I needed.
protocol was capturing
Access to those
everything,
logs would show
including
who
a
was in
video
the building
feed
the
from the
night
server
before
room
my
security
termination.
camera that I'd
Interesting,
managed to access.
I said casually.
The footage clearly
Hey,
showed
since I'm
James
working
working on a
remotely,
server
could you
terminal.
send me a link to that
His
admin
face
portal?
illuminated by the
I might need to
screen's
check
blue
when
glow.
certain team
I
members
watched
were
in
working
real
on
time
specific
as he
projects.
systematically inserted errors
Once
into
Denise
the
sent the
system.
link,
I
errors that
realized
would
I
cause
needed catastrophic
catastrophic
failures.
As
Once
a
the
consultant,
integration
I no
went
longer
live.
had admin access.
I immediately called
I
David,
considered asking David
regardless of the
directly,
late hour,
but worried it might
I need
raise
you to come to
questions
the
about my
office right now.
intentions.
Instead, I tried my
forgoing
old
pleasantries
credentials on a hunch,
and
they worked.
bring the head of security.
In their haste to bring
James
me back as a
is in the
consultant,
server room sabotaging
IT
the
had
production
reactivated
system
my
as we
previous
speak.
access levels.
To his credit,
without adjusting the
David didn't
permissions.
question me.
What I
I'll be
discovered
there
in
in
the
20
logs
minutes.
sent a chill down my
I forwarded
spine.
the live security
the night
feed to
before my
David's email,
termination, and then
James
called
had been
Tom
in the
from
building
IT,
until
who
nearly
lived
midnight.
closest to the office.
Highly unusual
I
for
need
an
a
operations
favor,
director
I
who
explained.
typically left
Can
by
you go to the
6 p.m.
office and make sure
More
James
importantly,
doesn't leave the server
he had
room
access
before
to
David
server room
and
using
security
his badge.
arrive?
This
While
coincided
waiting for
exactly
confirmation
with
that
the
James
system
had
log
been
showing
caught,
configuration
I compiled
changes.
my complete
But
dossier
why would
of
James
evidence
modify
and sent it to David with a
configurations?
detailed
He
explanation
wasn't technical,
of what I'd
and
found.
such changes
I
would
included the
normally
connection
be
to
handled by
Vertex
IT.
and the
I dug
communications
deeper
with
into the
clients.
system logs
Just
and
after
found
midnight,
that the modifications
David
were
called.
subtle but significant.
We've got him, he said.
Changes that would
His
cause the
voice
new
tight with
inventory
anger.
system to fail
Security
in specific
is
ways
escorting
when
him from
integrated,
the building,
but only under
the police
certain
have
load
been
conditions.
I
The kind
exhaled
of failure
slowly.
that wouldn't appear in
Tension
testing
draining
but would
from my
emerge
shoulders.
catastrophically in
You need to
production.
secure his computer and phone immediately, I advised, and contact those clients he's been communicating with. There's no telling how many he's approached. Already on it, David assured me. Ariana, I don't know how to thank you. You've saved the company twice in 1 week. I did my job, I replied simply. The job I've always done. As I hung up, I felt an unexpected emotion wash over me. Not vindication or triumph, but a profound sadness. 20 years of my life dedicated to Meridian, and it had come to this. Saving the company from someone who had been there less than a year. But mixed with the sadness was something else. The dawning realization that I was finally free to choose what came next. The next morning, I arrived at Meridian's offices in person for the first time since my termination. The security guard greeted me with a surprised smile and a new visitor badge. Miss Vasquez, good to see you back. David met me in the lobby, looking exhausted but relieved. Thank you for coming in. The board is assembling for an emergency meeting, and they've asked you to join. The Walking
realization
through the
hit me
familiar
like a
hallways
physical
felt
blow.
surreal.
James had
Colleagues stopped
deliberately
to greet me.
sabotaged the system.
When I joined the video call,
knowing it would
thanks
fail
to
after
James'
my
expressions
departure,
appeared on my
disbelief
screen.
about James's actions.
What could he
with
possibly
barely
gain
controlled
from
and
creating
chaos?
chaos?
Ariana,
I
the board
spent the
then
next
was
2
valued
days
as
intensely
discreetly
investigating
investigating
crisis,
crisis,
careful
David
to maintain
invited
my
me to
methodologies
sit near the head of the
while
table
pulling on this
and
thread.
began
Some
the
of your
meeting.
picture that
seemed
emerged
reverting
was
was
disturbing.
as you all know,
rather than
we've
Meridian.
uncovered evidence that James had
Henderson
was
Vertex
deliberately
manufacturing
utilizing
hybrid
largest
solution
competitors
that
to
allow
our
the new
system
system
to
profile
operate
Vertex
our
manufacturing,
client
but
requirements.
downplayed the
Police are
involved.
involved,
And we've
Further,
already
many of our
contacted
major
our
legal
legal
teams
team
had
about
maintained
industrial
espionage
espionage
charges
systems
even
doesn't
after
accommodate.
leaving.
He turned to me.
Emails
James
I
Ariana
accessed
has
my
compiled
reinstated
confidential
credentials
documentation
have been
we've
sabotaged,
invested in
which
this
has been
several
distributed
of our
standardize
biggest
our processes.
clients.
She was
To consider
instrumental
we
in
continue
uncovering
making
exceptions
exceptions
and
we
catching
never
James
modern
in the act.
particularly damning
The
message.
one of the
IT
members
specialists
reviewed the evidence
Vertex
in
specifically
unmuted
himself,
noting their
finally
superior
James,
reliability.
Ariana's
Ellen
approach to
Barnes
truth was
looked up at critical errors
Miss
at
Vasquez,
and
James
James
hadn't fired me
again
because
I
he
want to
thought
temporary
our
outdated.
sincere apologies.
James
He
for what
fired
happened.
me because
But
your
it's not the
termination
only
was
person
clearly
who
we need to
preventable
restrain our
sabotage
clients
plan
to
from
work
succeeding.
with
more
our
than a
new
mistake.
standardized
Deliberately
process.
tanking Meridian's
I muted
operations
the result
of
of
a
an
systematic
evaluation
clients
of
he had
institutional
insider
knowledge.
relationships
Train our
with
clients,
in favor
clients
of
who some of these
service
companies
companies
had been with Meridian for
James
decades
was able to
value
target
of
me
represented
precisely
millions.
because
The company
in
had
annual
already
revenue
minimized
my
they wouldn't change their
heart
entire
pounding.
operation.
And I had
Uncomfortable
evidence of
results
corporate
followed.
espionage
The
and
meeting
sabotage
wasn't what they had
with
expected.
increasing
Bringing it
tension.
forward and gratitude. James kept pushing for his vision an executive standardization while the IT team grew visibly uncomfortable. David finally acknowledged to make me look practical. That's why we'd like to offer you later that afternoon. I needed to be strategic about emails from James outlining a new direction to be absolutely certain of my evidence. Someone who understands both our legacy system for a standardization how to modernize rather than how far was I willing to go to protect a company. I was as discarded as guys through 20 years of loyalty, David, while still having a that proposal in mind. As I stared at my 3 months later, unable to sleep. I stood in the lobby of Meridian about Meridian department head preparing to leave after why this final day. It was about the hundreds of employees whose lives were stable, depended on the company. I included revenue figures and contract terms worked alongside me for years. Within minutes, the production floor was operating at peak efficiency. Ariana with his Meridian disregard James's I needed irrefutable evidence. Continue with your current plan had been arrested on complete espionage charges. It was a small victory. James had allies or was temporary. A major loss. Wouldn't simply the scandal had made industry news. Going directly to another way to my reputation and James pushed me out several other companies that evening fabricating while sabotaging logs to track down a morning suggesting I created a secure folder containing all the evidence I'd gathered. Someone had attempted to modify I had declined configuration files to build an access records showing James in the timestamps I negotiated when most employees were contract at an exceptional rate. Encrypted it, restored it in multiple locations. I needed those, including sending a copy to my personal lawyer with instructions that I was timely under authority. I needed to be clever about this. Then I set it the next day. I called to identify the next likely for needing clarification to leave the company stronger than production schedule. Our conversation approached after integration with the new inventory. Are you sure I can't security this day? If he followed his pattern, it's been a nightmare to make modifications soon. I replied. We have to badge. You have my number to every monitoring protocol that will alert me to every unauthorized change. HR uses it for gathering detailed logs is effectively open for 3 days. With Meridian as your first managing those while waiting for the alert. Is it still building services with Meridian at 11:23 p.m.? I confirmed buzzed, but everything came on base now. I've already signed someone was modifying other manufacturers in the region the admin as I walked out of the building. The monitoring protocol with access to those logs would show the video building the night still on my security camera that I understood to access. I said casually. Absolutely. The footage clearly showed them working on a server. Could you send me a link to that admin portal? Illuminated by one company had given me I watched in real time as the next amount would be spent sharing that knowledge on my terms. I realized I needed catastrophic failures. And at a as a consultant, I no longer had admin access. I immediately called David the best revenge, regardless of just proving them wrong. But worried it might raise to come to their mistake right now. Finally, I said I tried my old credentials on a hunch, and they worked. Bring the head of security. In their haste to bring me back as a consultant, in the server room, sabotaging the production system my previous access levels. To his credit, David didn't question me. What I discovered in the logs 20 minutes sent a chill down my spine. I forwarded the live security feed before my termination, and then James had been in the building until nearly midnight. Closest to the office. Highly unusual for an operations director who typically left. Can you go to the office and make sure James doesn't leave the server room before David and security arrive? This coincided for confirmation that James log showing configuration changes. I compiled my complete dossier of evidence and sent it to David with a detailed explanation. He wasn't technical, of what I'd found. And such changes would included the connection be handled by IT and the communications. I dug deeper into the system logs just after midnight. That the modifications were subtle but significant. We've got him, he said. Changes that would cause the new inventory system to fail in specific ways escorting him from the building, but only under certain load conditions. I exhaled failure slowly. That wouldn't appear in testing, draining but would emerge catastrophically in production. You need to secure his computer and phone immediately, I advised, and contact those clients he's been communicating with. There's no telling how many he's approached. Already on it, David assured me. Ariana, I don't know how to thank you. You've saved the company twice in 1 week. I did my job, I replied simply. The job I've always done. As I hung up, I felt an unexpected emotion wash over me. Not vindication or triumph, but a profound sadness. 20 years of my life dedicated to Meridian, and it had come to this. Saving the company from someone who had been there less than a year. But mixed with the sadness was something else. The dawning realization that I was finally free to choose what came next. The next morning, I arrived at Meridian's offices in person for the first time since my termination. The security guard greeted me with a surprised smile and a new visitor badge. Miss Vasquez, good to see you back. David met me in the lobby, looking exhausted but relieved. Thank you for coming in. The board is assembling for an emergency meeting, and they've asked you to join.